Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are glad to have you with us. When most people picture professional investing, they get this very specific image in their heads.
Oh, yeah, the movie version.
It's always something out of a movie. Wolf of Wall Street stuff. Someone is screaming into a phone, charts are flashing red and green, and there's all this adrenaline about picking that one stock that just goes to the moon.
It's the Hollywood version of finance, for sure. It's exciting, it's fast-paced, and it's almost entirely about the thrill of the chase, the big win.
Right. But we've got a stack of documents here today, our sources, that outline the actual day-to-day reality of being a dealing representative. And they paint a picture that is almost the exact opposite of all that chaos. It's not about the thrill. It's about this massive, almost invisible infrastructure designed specifically to stop you from blowing up your financial life.
That is the perfect way to frame it. We're looking at the financial safety net. Specifically, we're unpacking the regulatory obligations around the suitability process. And I know. Regulatory obligations sounds like the driest topic on earth.
That sounds like eating your vegetables.
It really does. But stick with us on this, because these rules, specifically the three pillars we're going to talk about, are pretty much the only thing standing between a secure retirement and, well, total ruin for millions of investors.
That's a strong statement.
Well, we see regulations as red tape, right? Just bureaucratic hurdles. But when you actually read through the source material, you realize these rules they're really a shield.
So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how this system actually works. We want to move past the idea of just, checking boxes on a form.
Yeah.
We want to understand why these rules exist, how they protect investors from bad advice, and frankly, protect advisors from getting sued into oblivion, and what happens when the system fails.
And the entire system, it really rests on what the industry calls the three-legged stool. You've got the first leg, know your client, or KYC.
KYC.
The second leg, know your product, or KYP. And then the bridge that connects them, the suitability determination.
And the logic here is pretty unforgiving, I take it. If you kick out one of those legs, the whole thing just collapses.
Completely. You simply cannot have ethical investing without all three of those working together.
Okay, so let's start with that first leg. KYC, know your client. To me, that sounds like a marketing slogan.
Yeah.
Like a coffee shop saying, oh, we know our clients. We know you like oat milk. But in the regulatory world, I'm guessing this means a lot more than knowing I take my coffee black.
Much, much more. The source material is adamant about this. KYC is not just a form you fill out in the lobby. It's defined as a meaningful interaction.
A meaningful interaction.
It's a regulatory mandate to collect essential facts about the human being sitting across from you. It implies a conversation, not just a questionnaire.
Because you can't recommend a path forward if you don't know where the person is standing right now.
Exactly. And the regulations, they break these essential facts down into two big buckets. First, you have the personal circumstances.
Which is the basic demographics, right? Like age, marital status, do you have kids?
Right. But it also drills down into employment status. And this is crucial because it speaks to stability. Are you a tenured professor with a guaranteed paycheck for life? Or are you a commissioned salesperson where one bad month means zero income?
Or retired, where you have no income from work and you're relying entirely on what you've saved up.
Precisely. So that's the personal side. Then you have the financial circumstances. This is the hard data. Net worth, liquidity needs, how fast can you get your hands on cash, and whether you're using leverage, which is, borrowing money to invest.
Okay.
But the part where this gets really interesting, and where I think the biggest aha moment is for a lot of people, is this concept of the risk profile.
Yeah, reading through the notes, this really stood out. We usually throw around the term risk profile like it's one single thing. Oh, I'm a high-risk guy. But the regulations actually split this into two kind of warring concepts: risk tolerance and risk capacity.
And they are often in direct conflict. This is where all the tension lies. Risk tolerance is purely psychological. It's the sleep factor.
How much can I lose before I completely panic and sell everything?
Yes. It's a feeling. It's your willingness to accept risk. A client might say, I want to be aggressive. I want to double my money. I love risk.
But risk capacity, that's different.
It's mathematical. It has nothing to do with your feelings. It is your financial ability to endure a loss without your life falling apart.
So tolerance is what I want to do, and capacity is what I can do.
Exactly. And here's the hard rule, the one that trips up so many people. The final risk profile must reflect the lower of the two.
Always a lower one.
Yeah.
Even if I beg and plead.
Always. There's a case study in the source text that just illustrates this perfectly. The story of Janice.
This one was actually kind of heartbreaking. Let's walk through it. So Janice is a single mother. She has 2 young kids, 4 and 6. She's working 2 part-time jobs, just grinding to make ends meet. And she somehow scrapes together about $20,000 in savings.
Which, for her situation, is her entire lifeline. It's her emergency fund, her safety net. It's everything.
Right, so she looks at her bank account, sees interest rates are basically 0, and thinks, I need this money to grow for my kids. I have to catch up. She goes to an advisor and says, I want high returns. I am willing to take the risk. Put me down as high risk.
So her risk tolerance is high.
Very high.
But it's high because she's desperate. She's chasing yield because she feels like she has no other choice.
But her risk capacity?
It is effectively 0. Think about it. If the market corrects by 20%, which happens all the time, she loses $4,000. For a wealthy client, losing $4,000 is a bad weekend in Vegas.
Yeah.
For Janice, that's rent. That's groceries. That's the heating bill. She physically cannot afford to lose that money.
So the advisor's in this really tough spot. The client is literally asking, pleading for high risk.
And the advisor has to say no. That is the regulatory obligation. Despite what Janice wants, the advisor must categorize her as low risk. If they put her in some volatile tech fund and it crashes, they are liable. They failed her.
That really flips the script on the customer's always right. In this case, the customer is wrong, and it's a professional's job to stop them.
It's a gatekeeper role. The advisor isn't a waiter taking an order. They're more like a doctor prescribing a treatment. And, a doctor doesn't just give you meds because you asked for them.
Right. And this isn't a one-time conversation either. That's another big misconception, the whole one-and-done myth.
Oh, the set it and forget it mentality. It's incredibly dangerous. The rules are clear that KYC is an ongoing obligation. You have to update it whenever there's a material change.
Getting married, having a baby, losing your job.
Or getting a big inheritance. Any major shift. The regulations say you have to review it at a minimum every 36 months, but really it should be continuous. The source material uses this great comparison between Thomas and Martha to show why time matters so much.
Right, so Thomas is 30. He makes $75,000 a year. He has 35 years until he retires.
So Thomas is in accumulation mode. He can afford a market crash because he has 3 decades to recover. He's high risk, high growth.
And Martha is 65, just retired, living off her portfolio.
If you took Thomas's portfolio full of volatile growth stocks and just gave it to Martha, you'd be committing malpractice. If the market drops 40%, Martha can't pay her bills. But here's the kicker. Thomas eventually becomes Martha.
Is the same person, just 30-something years down the road.
Exactly. And if the advisor doesn't update the KYC as Thomas ages, his portfolio becomes unsuitable just by the passage of time. It starts to rot, basically. You end up with a 65-year-old holding a 30-year-old's risk level.
That is a scary thought. Okay, so that's the first leg. We know the person. Now we have to look at the second leg. KYP, know your product.
This is the technical duty. As a dealing rep, you cannot recommend a product, a mutual fund, an ETF, whatever, if you don't understand its essential facts. The structure, the features, the risks, and the costs.
I feel like this should be obvious. You shouldn't sell something you don't understand. But with, thousands of funds out there, it must be harder than it sounds.
It is. And there's a specific trap here that the sources call the shelf rule.
The shelf rule.
So most advisors work for a firm, right? That firm has an approved product list or a shelf. The firm's compliance department has vetted these products and said, okay, these are legitimate. They aren't scams. You're allowed to sell them.
So if it's on the shelf, it's good to go. Pre-approved.
That is the trap. Just because the firm approved it for sale doesn't mean it is suitable for your specific client. Think of a grocery store. They sell milk and they sell super hot ghost pepper sauce. Both are approved products on the shelf.
But you do not put ghost pepper sauce in a baby's bottle.
Exactly. The firm says, this product is legitimate. The advisor has to answer, but is this product right for this person?
We have a case study here about a guy named James that highlights this perfectly. It's about PPN's principal protected notes.
Ah, yes. PPNs are tricky. They're often marketed as safe because your principal is guaranteed, kind of like a GIC.
So James hears about these. He thinks, great, it's like my GIC, but with a shot at higher returns. He wants to swatch his GIC for a PPM.
But he's missing an essential fact. A GIC is usually redeemable or has a short term. PPNs are complex instruments that often lock your money away for a long, long time, 5, 7, maybe 10 years.
And you can't get it out early.
You can't, or the penalty is massive. And in the case study, James had a liquidity need. He needed access to cash.
Right, so the advisor had to step in. Even though James thought he knew the product, he didn't understand the liquidity risk. The advisor's KYP obligation meant they had to say, James, this product locks you up. You need cash flow. This doesn't fit.
And that leads us to probably the biggest misconception in the whole industry, what I call the disclosure trap.
Oh, I highlighted this section. This is the whole buyer beware argument, isn't it?
It is. The idea that, hey, if I hand you a giant stack of paper, the prospectus, that lists every possible way you could lose all your money, then I'm off the hook. You signed it, you read it, it's your problem now.
Read the fine print, buddy.
And the regulations are crystal clear on this. Disclosure does not justify an unsuitable recommendation.
That's a powerful sentence. You can't just disclose your way out of giving bad advice.
Let's look at the Donato case. Donato is a client with a medium risk profile. His advisor, Remigio, wants to sell him an emerging markets fund.
And by definition, emerging markets are high risk. We're talking developing nations, currency swings, political instability, the works.
Correct. So Remigio thinks it's a great fund. I'll just tell Donato it's risky, give him the prospectus, and if he signs, we're golden.
But because Donato is rated medium risk,
the trade is unsuitable. Period. It doesn't matter if Remigio hired a skywriter to spell out, this is risky, over Donato's house. If the client is medium risk, you cannot recommend a high-risk product. The recommendation itself is the failure.
that's a crucial distinction. It puts the responsibility squarely back on the professional.
Exactly. Which brings us to the final pillar. We have the client, KYC, we have the product, KYP. Now we have to connect the dots, the suitability determination.
The bridge. And the core mandate here is a phrase that comes up again and again in the text. Client's interest first.
It sounds like a generic moral guideline, doesn't it? Like, be nice to people.
It does. It sounds like something you'd see on a poster in the break room.
But it's a hard regulatory standard. You must put the client's interest ahead of your own commissions, your sales targets, any incentives, and when you don't. Well, we have the story of Tyler Davidson,
And this isn't a hypothetical. This was a real enforcement case.
a textbook example of a conflict of interest. So Davidson has a client who wants to invest in a mutual fund. Now, these funds often come in different series. Think of them as different ticket prices for the same show.
Right. Some have lower fees for people who invest more money.
Exactly. This client qualified for the low-fee version, but Davidson sold her the DSC version deferred sales charge.
Okay, for everyone listening, let's just clarify DSC. Basically, if the client tries to sell the fund within, 5 to 7 years, they pay a massive penalty.
Right. But the advisor gets a big upfront commission check.
Ah.
So Davidson put her in a fund that locked her in for 7 years and charged her higher fees. Why? Because he earned a $15,346 commission on the trade.
Ouch. He explicitly chose the worse option for her because it was the better option for him.
He put his wallet ahead of her interest, and the consequences were severe. He was fined $22,500, had to pay $5,000 in costs, and he was suspended for a month.
So he lost way more than he made on the deal.
Plus, his reputation is torched. It just shows that suitability isn't a gut feeling. It's an objective analysis. You have to compare the KYC and the KYP and ask, does this actually fit?
And not just for one trade, but for the whole portfolio, which brings up concentration risk.
Yes, this is where you have to zoom out. You might find a specific small cap resource fund that is fantastic, great manager, great track record, and the client is high risk. So on paper, it fits. But if the client already has 90% of their money in mining stocks, adding more resource exposure is completely unsuitable.
Because if the price of oil drops, their entire life savings vanishes. They're way too concentrated.
Exactly. Even if the individual product is good, the portfolio becomes dangerous. Suitability is holistic. You have to look at the whole picture.
Okay, so we've covered how it's supposed to work. But humans are not always logical. What happens when a client just goes rogue? The unsolicited trade.
This is the advisor's nightmare. The client calls up and wants to do something just properly crazy. The source gives the example of Steve and Edwin.
Edwin's the client.
Edwin's the client. He goes to a cocktail party. He hears a rumor, maybe from a buddy, maybe from some YouTube video, that the currency is going to collapse and precious metals are going to the moon.
The classic cocktail party tip. I got a guy who knows a guy.
He calls Steve, his advisor, and says, sell all my treasury bills, which are super safe, and dump it all into gold and silver.
And Steve looks at Edwin's KYC and sees low risk, capital preservation, written in big letters.
Right. This trade is a total disaster waiting to happen for Edwin. It completely contradicts his profile.
So what does Steve do? Can he just block the trade?
It's nuanced. He cannot just say okay and push the button. That would be negligence. He must advise against it. He has to explain why it is unsuitable. Edwin, this goes against everything we planned. You could lose 30% in a month.
And if Edwin says, I don't care, it's my money.
If Edwin insists, Steve has a choice. He can execute the trade, but he has to document the warning and get Edwin to sign an acknowledgement. Basically a form that says, I'm doing this against my advisor's advice.
It's like signing a waiver before you go skydiving.
Exactly. However, and this is a key power the advisor has, Steve is not obligated to accept the trade.
He can fire the client.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
If the trade is just too risky, or if Steve feels it's ethically compromising to be involved, he can say, I can't be a party to this. You'll have to do it somewhere else.
That's a powerful position. It really reinforces that the advisor isn't just an order taker.
They're a risk manager. And speaking of risk, we have to touch on the sharpest tool in the shed, leverage.
Borrowing to invest.
This is the double-edged sword of finance. You borrow money to buy more stock. If the stock goes up, you make a fortune. But if it goes down,
You lose your money and you still owe the loan.
it amplifies everything. The rules treat this with extreme caution. There's a specific suitability determination just for leverage. You can't just check the high-risk box on a form. You have to check the client's net worth and their cash flow, their ability to service the debt.
So you can't just recommend leverage because a client has a high income.
No. If they lose that job, can they still pay the loan? If the market drops, do they have other assets to cover a margin call? If the answer is no, leverage is unsuitable. Full stop.
It seems like the common thread here is that every time the situation changes, the safety net has to be checked again.
Yes. The triggers for review.
We mentioned material changes like marriage or a job loss, the Iser and Nazma example where Nazma lost her job, which required an immediate portfolio review. But what about transferring assets?
That's a huge trigger. If you move your account to a new firm, that new advisor has to do a fresh suitability review. They can't just assume the last person got it right.
So just because it was suitable at Bank A doesn't mean it's suitable at Bank B.
Or, more accurately, the new advisor is responsible for it now. They have to verify it themselves. Every time the hands on the wheel change, the map needs to be checked.
It really is a dynamic system. It feels less like a set of static rules and more like a living process.
That's the goal. When it works right, it's invisible. You just feel secure. But when it fails, like with Tyler Davidson, that's when people get really hurt.
So let's bring this all home. We've unpacked the 3 pillars. KYC, knowing the person, specifically the math of their survival, not just their feelings. KYP, knowing the product's dark corners. And suitability, making sure the puzzle pieces actually fit.
And doing it all under that client interest first banner.
For you, the listener, what's the big takeaway here? I think it's realizing that a good advisor is sometimes, well, they're kind of annoying.
Long said I. That's a fair way to put it.
No, really. If you call your advisor with a hot tip and they say no, or let's slow down, or that doesn't fit your profile, they aren't being difficult. They're doing their job. They're fulfilling their obligation to stop you from hurting yourself.
That is the sign of a professional. The advisor who says yes to everything, the yes man, is the one you should be terrified of. The one who asks the hard questions is the one who's actually earning their fee.
Absolutely. Now, before we sign off, we always like to leave you with a little homework. Something to chew on.
I want you to think back to the Thomas versus Martha timeline we talked about. When was the last time you actually looked at your financial profile on file with your institution?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Most of us probably haven't seen it since we opened the account.
Many of us set these things up 5, maybe 10 years ago. Just think about how much your life has changed in 10 years. Kids, jobs, houses, your health. If your life is different, but your KYC form still describes who you were in 2015, your entire portfolio might technically be unsuitable right now.
It's ghost paperwork.
And the only person who can trigger that update is you.
A sobering thought to end on. Go check your paperwork, everyone. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Stay safe out there.